feeling slightly ridiculous. I have a bit of an unusual project. I need to make my house disappear." There was a pause, then a hearty laugh. "Disappear? You mean, like, actually disappear?" "Well, not actually," I clarified. "More like visually disappear, camouflage, optical illusion. You know, make it blend into the background so well it looks like it's not even there." "Intriguing," the illusionist said. "Very intriguing. Tell me more." "Okay," he said, tapping his chin with the pencil. "We've got some good natural camouflage to work with here. Trees in the back, that big oak on the side. We can definitely make this work." I pulled out the dreaded HOA-approved color palette. "Here's the catch," I said. "They want earth tones." Kevin took one look at the swatches and burst out laughing. "Earth tones? These are more like blah tones. But don't worry, we can work with this. We'll just enhance them. Think of it as camouflage with a beige base coat." It was a Tuesday. I remember it clearly because Tuesdays are usually my do absolutely nothing days. I was sprawled out on my porch swing, perfectly good iced tea in hand, enjoying the mild weather and the lack of HOA-related drama in my life. That's when I saw it. The envelope. It wasn't just any envelope, mind you. This was HOA stationery. Thick, creamy, off-white cardstock with that embossed logo, a stylized silhouette of identical houses that always gave me the creeps. My stomach immediately dropped. I just knew this wasn't going to be good. I ripped it open, hoping, against all logic, that it was a misaddressed flyer about a neighborhood potluck. Nope. It was a notice of exterior color non-compliance. Apparently, my house, my perfectly lovely, slightly faded but still totally respectable light blue house, was an egregious violation of the community's aesthetic harmony. I swear, these people and their flowery language. It's paint, Doris, not a declaration of war. The letter went on, in excruciating detail, about how my house color was disruptive and detracted from the overall cohesive appearance of the neighborhood. It demanded that I repaint within 30 days, using only colors from their pre-approved palette. I scanned the list. Gentle fawn, whispering wheat, subtle stone, barely there beige, almost invisible ivory. It was basically 50 shades of beige, each more depressing than the last. I actually gagged a little. My house was going to look like a giant depressing mushroom. My phone was already in my hand before I finished reading. I dialed Mark, my best friend and, conveniently, a lawyer. "Mark," I said, trying to keep the hysteria out of my voice, "you are not going to believe the fresh hell the HOA has unleashed upon me." Mark, who's heard it all when it comes to HOA shenanigans, just chuckled. "Let me guess. They don't like your petunias?" "Worse," I said, pacing my porch. "They hate my house color. They want me to repaint the entire thing in beige." There was a pause, then a burst of laughter. "Seriously, beige? That's peak HOA nonsense, my friend. You gotta fight this. This is a hill worth dying on." "I know, right?" I said, feeling slightly vindicated. "It's not even that bad. It's a little faded, sure, but it's not like I painted it neon pink or something." "Fight the power, man," Mark said, still chuckling. "Fight the beige power." So, the following Thursday found me at the monthly HOA meeting, armed with a folder full of slightly less offensive paint chips and a rapidly dwindling sense of optimism. I figured maybe, if I showed them I was willing to compromise, they'd back down. Spoiler alert, I was wrong. The meeting was held in the community center, which, of course, was a monument to beige. The walls were beige, the carpet was beige, the chairs were beige. I felt like I'd wandered into a sepia-toned photograph. It was soul-crushingly bland. I took a seat near the back, trying to blend in with the beige upholstery. Then she appeared. Doris Higginbottom, HOA president, self-appointed arbiter of taste, and, from what I could gather, the supreme ruler of all things beige. She was wearing a pantsuit the color of unbleached flour, and her gray hair was pulled back into a bun so tight, I'm surprised it didn't pull her face into a permanent grimace. This woman looked like she hadn't smiled since 1987. Doris took the stage with the air of someone about to announce the winners of a very serious, very beige competition. She cleared her throat, adjusted her microphone, and launched into a speech that could have cured insomnia. "Good evening, fellow homeowners," she began, her voice as dry and crackly as an autumn leaf. "As you know, we are here tonight to discuss matters of vital importance to the continued harmony and aesthetic integrity of our beloved community." She clicked a button, and a projector flickered to life, displaying a slideshow of houses. And oh, what a slideshow it was. House after house, each painted in a slightly different, yet equally depressing, shade of beige. It was like looking at a catalog of existential dread. "As you can see," Doris droned on, gesturing with a laser pointer at a particularly beige house, "our community standards emphasize a cohesive and unified color palette. This ensures that our homes blend seamlessly together, creating a tranquil and aesthetically pleasing environment for all." I wanted to scream. Blend seamlessly together. We were going to look like a giant beige blob. When it was time for community concerns, I raised my hand, feeling a surge of rebellious energy. Doris looked at me with the kind of disdain usually reserved for telemarketers and people who wear socks with sandals. "Yes, mister," she said, peering at a list. "Mr. Taylor," I replied, standing up. "I'm here to discuss the notice I received about my house color." "Ah, yes," Doris said, a flicker of something that might have been amusement in her eyes. "The blue house." I pulled out my folder of paint chips. "I understand the concern about maintaining a cohesive look," I began, trying to sound reasonable. "But I think the current color is not that far off from the approved palette. I've even brought some samples that are closer." Doris cut me off with a wave of her hand, a gesture so dismissive it could have knocked me off my feet. "Mr. Taylor, the rules are quite clear. Your current house color is not in compliance. You have 30 days to repaint, using one of the approved colors." I tried again. "But there are other houses in the neighborhood that are in much worse shape. Some have peeling paint, cracked siding." "Those are separate issues, Mr. Taylor," Doris said, her voice turning icy. "We are addressing those on a case-by-case basis. Your issue is the color of your house." "But it's just a color!" I exclaimed, my voice rising slightly. "It's not hurting anyone, and repainting is expensive." Doris's eyes narrowed. "Rules are rules, Mr. Taylor." Defeated, but with a spark of defiance still flickering within me, I decided to try one last sarcastic tactic. "So," I said, forcing a smile, "just to be clear, I can paint it any shade of beige I want, as long as it's on that list?" Doris smiled back, a thin, cruel smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Within the approved palette, of course, Mr. Taylor. We wouldn't want any unpleasant surprises." The meeting adjourned shortly after that. I walked out, feeling like I'd just been steamrolled by a beige-colored tank. But as I drove home, past all the identical, soulless houses, a thought began to take shape in my mind. Doris wanted beige? Oh, I'd give her beige. I'd give her so much beige, she'd never look at another neutral color again. It was time to get creative. It started with an idea, a half-joking comment of Mark, Camouflage to be exact. The next day, still fuming from the HOA meeting and Doris's beige tyranny, I called Mark again. "Okay," I said. "Remember how you joked about painting my house camouflage?" "Yeah," Mark said, a hint of apprehension in his voice. "Why?" I'm thinking, maybe it's not such a crazy idea. There was a long silence. Then, wait, are you serious? Dead serious. Think about it. They want me to repaint, right? They want earth tones, right? Well, what's more earth tone than, the actual earth? Mark started laughing. You're actually going to do it? You're going to camouflage your house? I'm thinking urban camouflage, I corrected him. The kind that makes buildings blend into their surroundings. Make it look like nothing's there. Dude, that's insane, Mark said, but I could hear the admiration in his voice. And also, kind of brilliant. And so began my descent into the wonderfully weird world of camouflage. I spent hours online, researching everything from military-grade camouflage patterns to urban stealth techniques. I learned about dazzle camouflage, used on ships during World War I, and about the intricate patterns designed to disrupt the human eye's ability to perceive shapes and outlines. I even found articles about optical illusions and how they could be used to create the impression of invisibility. It was a rabbit hole of epic proportions, and I was happily tumbling down it. But I quickly realized this was beyond my DIY capabilities. I could slap some paint on a wall, sure, but creating a full-blown optical illusion? I needed a professional. I needed an artist. I needed the illusionist. That's what he called himself anyway. I found him through a local artists collective website. His profile was full of mind-bending murals, trompe-l'oeil paintings that made walls look like they were crumbling, floors that appeared to drop into bottomless pits, and ceilings that opened up to starry skies. The guy was clearly a master of visual deception. His tagline was, "I don't just paint walls, I bend reality." Perfect. I called the number on his website, half expecting to get some automated answering service. Instead, a cheerful voice answered, "The illusionist, at your service?" "Hi," I said, feeling slightly ridiculous. I have a bit of an unusual project. I need to make my house disappear." There was a pause, then a hearty laugh. "Disappear? You mean like actually disappear?" "Well, not actually," I clarified. "More like visually disappear, camouflage, optical illusion. Make it blend into the background so well, it looks like it's not even there." "Intriguing," the illusionist said. "Very intriguing. Tell me more." I explained the whole HOA saga, Doris's beige obsession, and my desire for sweet, visual revenge. "So, you want to stick it to the HOA by making your house literally vanish?" the illusionist said, clearly enjoying the concept. "I love a challenge, and I especially love messing with HOAs. When can I come take a look?" The illusionist, whose real name turned out to be Kevin, arrived the next day. He was a whirlwind of artistic energy, dressed in paint-splattered overalls and sporting a pair of brightly colored glasses perched on his nose. He had a wild glint in his eye that suggested he was either a genius or completely mad, possibly both. Kevin immediately started circling my house, muttering to himself about angles, light sources, and visual disruption. He pulled out a sketchbook and began furiously drawing, his pencil a blur on the page. "Okay," he said, tapping his chin with the pencil. "We've got some good natural camouflage to work with here. Trees in the back, that big oak on the side. We can definitely make this work." I pulled out the dreaded HOA-approved color palette. "Here's the catch," I said. "They want earth tones." Kevin took one look at the swatches and burst out laughing. "Earth tones? These are more like blah tones. But don't worry, we can work with this. We'll just enhance them. Think of it as camouflage with a beige base coat." He then launched into a detailed explanation of his plan. It involved a combination of geometric patterns, strategically placed shading, and what he called voids, areas of color that would trick the eye into seeing empty space where there was actually wall. He showed me some rough sketches. My house looked like a glitch in the Matrix, a pixelated mess that somehow managed to look both present and absent at the same time. The key, Kevin explained, is to break up the straight lines of the house. We'll use angled stripes and irregular shapes to disrupt the silhouette. The garage door will be a particularly fun challenge. We'll make it disappear completely. And the windows, I asked. We'll outline them in a way that makes them look like reflections of the sky and trees, Kevin said with a mischievous grin. From a distance, they'll be practically invisible. We spent the next hour refining the design. Kevin was a fountain of ideas, constantly tweaking and adjusting the patterns, talking about focal points and negative space like he was composing a symphony of deception. The final design was a masterpiece of camouflage, a blend of greens, browns, grays, and, yes, even some of those dreaded beiges, all arranged in a way that would make my house vanish into the landscape. Before he left, Kevin handed me a few paint samples, carefully chosen to match the HOA's earth tones while still working with his camouflage design. "Get these approved," he said. "In writing. That's your insurance policy." I took the samples to the HOA office the next day, handing them over to a bored-looking clerk. I didn't mention the camouflage, of course. I just said I was complying with their repainting order. They stamped the samples approved without a second glance. They had no idea what they were signing off on. I practically skipped out of the office, barely able to contain my glee. Operation Vanishing House was officially a go. The actual painting took about a week. Kevin and his crew were like a well-oiled paint-slinging machine. They worked with a speed and precision that was mesmerizing. To avoid arousing too much suspicion, and to keep the HOA off my back, I parked my car a few blocks away and pretended I was on a business trip. Whenever curious neighbors asked what was going on, I'd just shrug and say, "Oh, you know, HOA stuff, repainting. It's a whole thing." This usually elicited sympathetic nods and eye rolls. Little did they know. Finally, the day arrived. The scaffolding came down. Kevin and his crew were packing up their equipment, looking exhausted but satisfied. Kevin, grinning from ear to ear, handed me a pair of those cheap cardboard 3D glasses. "What are these for?" I asked, puzzled. "Part of the magic," Kevin said with a wink. "Put these on and walk across the street. Stand right about there." He pointed to a spot on the sidewalk directly opposite my house. I did as I was told, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. I put on the glasses, and then I gasped. My house, it was gone. I mean, I knew it was still there. I could feel the solid ground beneath my feet, and I could see the faint outlines of the house if I looked really, really closely. But from across the street, with the 3D glasses on, it looked like an empty lot. The camouflage was that good. The colors, the patterns, the strategically placed voids, it all blended seamlessly into the surrounding trees and sky. The garage door had vanished. The windows were practically invisible. It was like my house had been erased from existence. I took off the glasses, and the house reappeared, albeit in a much more abstract, geometric form. I put the glasses back on. Poof, gone. I did this about 5 times, giggling like a madman. The illusion was perfect. My first instinct, of course, was to call Mark. "You have to get over here," I said, trying to control my laughter. "You will not believe your eyes." Mark arrived 10 minutes later, looking skeptical. "Okay, let's see this invisible house of yours." I handed him the 3D glasses. He put them on, walked across the street, and stopped. His jaw dropped. He stood there for a full minute, speechless, just staring at the empty space where my house should have been. Then he burst out laughing, a loud, unrestrained guffaw that echoed down the street. "You absolute madman," he finally managed to say. wiping tears from his eyes. "You actually did it! You made your house disappear! Doris Higginbottom is going to have a coronary!" The next morning, I set up my observation post. I brewed a pot of coffee, pulled up a chair to my now invisible living room window, and waited. Doris Higginbottom, I knew from careful observation, took her daily power walk at precisely 7:30 a.m. At 7:28 a.m., I saw her approaching, her beige power walking outfit a stark contrast to the lush green of the neighborhood. She was swinging her arms with the kind of aggressive determination that only an HOA president could muster. At 7:30 a.m. sharp, she reached my house, or rather, the spot where my house used to be visible. She stopped, dead in her tracks. Her face went through a series of expressions that I will cherish forever. First, confusion. She blinked, looked around, as if she'd somehow taken a wrong turn. Then, disbelief. She squinted, pulled out her phone, probably to check the address, and looked back at the empty space. Finally, pure, unadulterated outrage. Her face turned a shade of red I didn't think was humanly possible. She started frantically dialing her phone, jabbing at the screen with a trembling finger. I couldn't hear exactly what she was saying, but I could see her gesturing wildly at my house, or rather, not at my house. Within minutes, a police car pulled up. I saw Doris, now practically apoplectic, pointing and yelling at the officer. "It's gone," I heard her shriek. "He made his house disappear. It's a public safety hazard. It's illegal. It's unbeige." I couldn't hold it in any longer. I burst out laughing, clutching my sides. I decided it was time to make my appearance. I strolled outside, feigning innocence. "Good morning, officer," I said, trying to keep a straight face. "Is there a problem?" The officer, a young guy who looked utterly bewildered, turned to me. "Ma'am," he said to Doris, "I can see the house just fine. It's right there." He pointed directly at my camouflaged masterpiece. Doris sputtered. But, it's invisible, can't you see? He's using some kind of witchcraft." I decided to play along. "Officer," I said, "I think she might be having a little trouble with her vision. Maybe she needs to see an optometrist?" The officer, clearly struggling to keep a straight face, suggested that Doris might want to calm down and maybe have a cup of tea. He then drove off, leaving Doris fuming on the sidewalk. The news of the disappearing house spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. That afternoon, Doris called an emergency HOA meeting. The community center was packed. Everyone was buzzing with excitement, whispering about the invisible house and the camouflage genius. Doris, looking like she'd aged 10 years in a single day, took the stage. Her usual beige pantsuit was slightly rumpled, and her bun was noticeably less tight. "This is an outrage," she declared, her voice shaking. "Mr. Taylor has made a mockery of our community standards. He has painted his house in a way that is unacceptable." She then tried to introduce a new rule, a hastily written amendment to the HOA bylaws, banning camouflage or illusionary paint of any kind. The crowd erupted. "This is ridiculous!" someone shouted. "We love the house!" another yelled. "It's art!" a third person chimed in. People started chanting, "Let the house stay! Let the house stay!" Someone in the back pulled out their phone and started playing a TikTok video of my house. It was one of those videos where someone walks up to the empty lot, then throws a ball which bounces off the invisible wall. The video had apparently gone viral. There were already over 5 million views. 5 million! Doris, seeing her authority crumble before her eyes, let out a strangled scream. It was a sound of pure defeat, the death knell of her beige reign. She grabbed her purse and stormed out of the community center, leaving behind a room full of cheering, laughing neighbors. I, of course, was smirking. It was a good day to be a homeowner who hated beige. In the days and weeks that followed, my house became a bona fide local legend. People would drive from miles around, sometimes even from other towns, just to see the disappearing house. They'd park across the street, pull out their phones, and take pictures of what appeared to be an empty lot. I even saw a few families picnicking on my invisible lawn. It was surreal. Tourists, bless their confused little hearts, would show up clutching printed-out directions and looking utterly bewildered. They'd stand in front of my house, double-checking the address, then staring at the empty space with expressions of profound confusion. I started leaving a few pairs of the 3D glasses on my porch, just for them. The look on their faces when they put them on and the house magically appeared was priceless. The TikTok video, of course, went completely viral. It racked up millions of views, spawned countless imitations, and even got featured on a few local news channels. News crews started showing up, wanting to interview the homeowner who made his house disappear. I always wore the 3D glasses during the interviews, hamming it up for the cameras. It's all about perspective, I'd say, gesturing vaguely at the empty lot. Sometimes you just have to look at things a little differently. The whole thing reached peak absurdity when a famous street artist, known only as Shade, contacted me. He'd seen the video online and was fascinated by the concept. He wanted to collaborate on a hidden mural project, adding even more layers of illusion to my already invisible house. Think of it, Shade said, his voice crackling with excitement over the phone, as a meta-camouflage. A camouflage within a camouflage. We'll hide images within the existing patterns, things that only become visible from certain angles or at certain times of day. It'll be like a giant interactive puzzle. How could I say no? My house was now a canvas for even more elaborate illusions. We spent a week planning and executing the hidden murals. We added subtle shifts in color and texture, creating images that appeared and disappeared depending on the light and the viewer's perspective. It was like my house had become a living, breathing work of art. Meanwhile, the fallout from the HOA meeting was glorious. Doris Higginbottom, defeated and humiliated, resigned from the HOA in disgrace. I heard, through the neighborhood grapevine, that she'd moved to an even stricter gated community, one with rules so rigid they even dictated the acceptable shade of white for window trim. I imagined her there, surrounded by an endless expanse of beige, slowly going mad. It was a beautiful thought. Life with an invisible house was, to put it mildly, interesting. I got used to the constant stream of visitors, the confused looks, and the occasional shouts of, "Wow!" when someone finally saw the house. Then, one sunny Saturday morning, a moving truck pulled up next door. A young couple, probably in their late 20s, got out, looking slightly dazed and overwhelmed, the universal expression of new homeowners. They started unloading boxes, and I watched them for a while, feeling a pang of sympathy. Moving is the worst. After a few minutes, the woman noticed me and walked over, a hesitant smile on her face. "Hi," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Sarah, and this is my husband, Tom. We're your new neighbors." "Welcome to the neighborhood," I said, shaking her hand. "I'm Joe." "We're so excited to be here," Sarah said, glancing around. "It's such a beautiful, quiet neighborhood." Then she frowned slightly. This might be a silly question, but do you know where the house at number 12 is? We have the address, but—" She trailed off, looking confused. I pointed directly at my house, at the spot where, to her unaugmented eyes, there was nothing but trees and sky. "Right there," I said. Sarah and Tom stared. They looked at me, then at the empty lot, then back at me. Their faces were a mixture of bewilderment and polite disbelief. "But there's nothing there," Tom said, stating the obvious. I grinned. It's a long story, I said. You'll get used to it. It's a feature, not a bug. I briefly explained the whole HOA saga, the camouflage paint, and the 3D glasses. They listened with growing amusement, their initial confusion slowly giving way to laughter. You're kidding, Sarah said, shaking her head. That's amazing. Welcome to the neighborhood, I repeated, feeling a surge of neighborly pride. It's never boring around here. I went back into the house and put my ladder in the garage, grabbing the flag I had made. I went up on the roof. It was time. I unraveled it. It was a custom-made flag, a black triangle with the words "Stealth Mode Engaged" in bold military-style font. I attached it to the flagpole on my roof, letting it flap proudly in the breeze. I stood there for a moment, admiring my handiwork. Maybe I had overdone it a little. The flag was a bit much, even for me. But honestly, I didn't regret a single thing. I'd fought the beige tyranny, and